Members for coming to the meeting. This is the second meeting of the Bills Committee on Pesticides Amendment Bill 2013. Today we are going to receive deputations. There will be 7 deputations appearing today. Let us invite the deputations to come in now. Deputations and individuals, welcome. Deputations and individuals, welcome to the meeting, and I also welcome the administration's representatives. When you make use of the earphone, now please wear the earphone.
To these councils, and please put on your earpiece.
Please wear the earpiece. The floor is channel 0. Channel 1 is Cantonese and channel 2 is English. When you speak, please clip the microphone on your lapel. Please clip the microphone on your lapel. And I'd like to remind deputations that what you say today at the meeting is not covered by the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance, Cap 382. In other words, you are not protected by that ordinance.
Piece and your earpiece is on the table, and also clip your microphones onto your cloth so that when you speak, we can hear. Okay,
if you have settled down, let us now invite the deputation to speak. I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that each of you will be given 5 minutes to speak. The first one to speak is Ms. Karen Mack from the Civic Party. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, the Civic Party supports the bill so that the standards for monitoring pesticide residues in food will be aligned with international standards. The Health and Welfare Policy branch of the Civic Party is always very concerned about food safety. That is why the Civic Party would like to make the following points to the administration, and that is what more can be done after the bill is endorsed so that we can protect public safety. Pesticides are a durable organic pollutant. It releases toxins slowly and it can accumulate in living things, and it is very difficult for them to be degenerated in the environment. We understand different pesticides have been used on fruits and vegetables, but internationally speaking, there is still no scientific method to assess the harm that can be done to human beings and the environment by the accumulative effect of one or more pesticides in food. So the administration should actually do a better gatekeeping job and should sample vegetables for testing more. We understand that the Center for Food Safety does have a food monitoring program. It regularly samples imported food for pesticide residues and other pollutants. However, we think the system lacks transparency. We would propose that every year you can write a detailed report to list all food items that have been sampled for checking the number of samples taken and pollutants that have been discovered or tested. Because if you have found that there is no non-compliance, you do not tell us what you have done. And also, in that annual report, I hope you will detail the names of the food, the type of food, and the places of origin if any non-compliance is found. And the report should not be passively published just on the internet, and you should not just publish pamphlets for the public who care to get one. Those are passive media in our view. We believe the administration should step up public education and make use of radio and television announcements of public interest to inform the public. Also, we should step up a reporting system. If in case there are toxins or harmful substances discovered locally, you should report it to the mainland, because we know that we are closely linked with our neighboring places. So we should have a stronger reporting system. I'm sure that reporting system is in place, but I think we can do a better job. Apart from food safety, we are aware that members of the public can very conveniently purchase domestic use one-off or disposable pesticides. When we do our annual cleanup, some families prefer to use such one-off disposable pesticides. These are organic chemicals. Even if they are of low concentration, even if the volume used is low, they can still accumulate in the atmosphere. We believe the packaging of such products should be monitored so that there is emphasis placed on the potential risks they can pose on human beings and the environment, so people can make an informed choice. Because sometimes you just don't need to use these pesticides if you do better prevention, so that your house or your garden is not full of these pests and insects. Also, you should do some intelligence gathering in the market instead of waiting to be informed by our neighbors if anything untoward should happen in those places. These are the views on the bill from the Civic Party. Thank you. Thank you. Next one, Mr. Paul Melsom.
You would like to use PowerPoint, but I'm sorry, you do have 5 minutes.
Okay, one second. How do I put this on, Tove? One second. How do I put it?
Give you a hand.
Okay. This is my submission on pesticides. I implore you to read this and understand some of the serious health and safety issues linked to pesticides, especially facing children, and grasp the full severity of the situation. I am a UK college-trained horticulturalist in the safe use of pesticides in plant nurseries as well as in the UK Experimental Horticultural Centre. I have been working in Hong Kong since '97. I haven't used pesticides for 30 years because of their health risks. For the last 11 years I've been teaching organic eco-education in Hong Kong. I have been appalled beyond belief by the complete lack of controls and guidelines for pesticides used in schools. These are, in my experience, non-existent, exposing children to some of the worst neurotoxic pesticides around and seriously increasing their health risks for getting serious diseases in the future. Many parents are deeply worried by this unbelievable situation. I have contacted the relevant government departments on numerous occasions, and I have found the pesticide guidelines and risk assessment guidelines to be completely useless. And I like to emphasise useless. For comments, see slides 26 to 37 in the long version for the committee. This is plants with recently sprayed pesticide in the school. You can see the pesticide clinging onto the leaf. This is active for several days, and the half-life of some of these pesticides is 30 days. These are neurotoxins. I've actually had it on myself. I've been to hospital. I've had numbing on my arms, and I've still got chemical sensitivity now. I asked to immediately suspend all dangerous pesticides immediately from being used in schools. These should include the neurotoxin pesticides, the organophosphates, which includes diazinon. Diazinon has actually been banned in Europe, for the whole of Europe in March of last year because it's so dangerous. Review all pesticide use in schools. New enforcement measures must be introduced for pesticides used in public places, including schools, and with severe penalties for any breaches. There should be full public engagement, education and consultation on pesticides. Pesticide-free schools. Hong Kong's aim should be for pesticide schools to ensure free schools to ensure the long-term health of children, staff and susceptible fetuses and pregnant women. New York and Connecticut campaigned and won a victory for pesticide-free schools in 2010. Please see the website. Innocent, inquisitive children. This is my son playing around. They pick up pesticides in the new territories and in schools. As parents, we should have the right to know what pesticides are used around our children and have a voice in protecting our children from these life-threatening poisons. Many pesticides used in Hong Kong are banned or have restricted use and cannot be used in schools or domestic use in other countries. Pesticides are poisons. Pesticides are toxic poisons made in industrial factories to kill insects. The pesticide control applicators in Hong Kong need no licence, recognised certificate or qualification to spray hazardous pesticides in schools. This is wrong. These people can actually come off the streets with no maths and get the concentrations completely wrong. They can be up to 10 times the wrong concentration in the school. There's no monitoring at all. Pesticides not only kill insects, they make children and people very sick, in some cases terminally ill. Pesticides are known to cause many types of cancers, affect fetuses and pregnant women, endocrine disruption, that's the hormone system, reproductive system, Parkinson's disease, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Many studies list many cancers resulting from pesticide exposure, especially is concerned for children, including childhood and adult leukemia, childhood brain cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, that's linked to diazinon, which is being used in schools, which can be used in classrooms, in fact, and that's the one that's been banned in the whole of Europe. Neuroblastoma, brain cancer, prostate cancer, kidney cancer, pancreatic cancer and lung cancer. Although I applaud the government for proposing to adopt the Stockholm Convention and the Rotterdam Convention on pesticides, these fall a long way short of safeguarding the public and children from pesticides. Diazinon, as I have said, is banned. It's banned in 27 countries. This insecticide is being used in schools. There is no restriction for this being used in classrooms. This is appalling, unbelievable. There are safe and natural alternatives should be sought for pest control. The government should adopt a much safer integrated natural pest control methods. There is a lot of things out there that can be used if the government did its research and development and didn't stop dragging its feet. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I speak quick.
我哋跟住下一位係
Next, Pest Control Personnel Association of Hong Kong. Thank you. On behalf of our practitioners, well, I would like to say something about the environmental hygiene. Well, actually, many core members of our sector, and according to statistics, many of our practitioners receive trainings at the tertiary level up to 20 hours. And for the pesticides usually used, according to our contracts with governments and major organizations, we use certain types of pesticides, and there are detailed specifications on the use of SDS, etc. And for certain types of pesticides, well, excluding crops for the environment as a whole, because our bosses are worried about the possible litigation, we use the other type of chemical which poses lesser risks to people's health and the environment. And so that that means pesticides not containing organic solvent, but rather water-soluble pesticides. As for more hazardous pesticides, it's more difficult to purchase them in the market, and Hong Kong's market is quite small. According to our statistics, our practitioners, if they get any contract with the government departments or major organizations, the school principals are also very concerned about the pesticides used. They are required to submit information to them.
And for schools, maybe nowadays school principals are aware of their responsibilities on the use of pesticides. So they ask frontline workers whether they are suitably qualified, whether they have any certificates. So even consumers are aware of the possible civil liability should any problems arise. And then they may cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars for litigation. So they are more concerned about it now, and we also attach importance to staff training, so on and so forth. And things are not like what happens in the 50s and 60s, where we use the chlorine type of pesticides. If people get, if we have proper safeguards both before and after the spraying of pesticides, we will be able to address this problem. And for contractors, well, they don't usually spray large amounts of pesticide, because if they use too much, this will have an implication on their costs as well. Normally we use larvicide to kill mosquitoes, and for excessive amounts, well, they need approval on the use of a certain type of pesticides. So it is not a situation where we have no monitoring at all. You need to use registered pesticides only. If you use unregistered pesticides, you may face penalties like fines or even imprisonment. So businessmen won't risk themselves like that. Next, Mr. Yip Pak-chong from South China Turf Managers Association. Good morning, Chairman, members, and representatives from the administration. I'd like to say something about our association. Well, we are a group of managers that manages turf and green areas, and we meet regularly to review our standards and guidelines to enhance our quality. And we have seminars, and we invite experts to share their expertise on turf management. Pesticides is also our concern. We attend this meeting here today to support the Pesticides Amendment Bill. Our sector is also very concerned about it. When we use pesticides, we use products that poses less environmental risks and hazards, and there are new products that are less toxic in other countries, and we're adopting these products. And these products will leave behind less hazardous pesticides in the environment. So I hope the administration would also help the sector. This is my view. And in the future, if there are other amendments, we are happy to offer our views on behalf of the sector to the administration. Thank you. Mr. Yip, you do not have a written submission. If you have one, please forward to us. Next, Hong Kong Cleaning Association, Mr. Choi Ping-yi. Thank you, Chairman. Members, representatives from the administration, we support this amendment bill. Now, actually, Mr. Leung has already made it very clear that the sector or the workers of our sector have basically gone through training. We understand the advantages to our sector once this amendment bill is passed. All right, thank you. Ms. Nuria Gonzalez Lorenzo.
I come here today on behalf of many parents in Hong Kong who, like myself, are extremely concerned about the widely use of pesticides in schools, playgrounds, parks, residential buildings, and other public places. Although we understand Hong Kong is a city at danger from different mosquito-borne diseases and other pests, we still think there should be stricter regulations and control in the use of pesticides around children, especially in schools. Schools get sprayed on a regular basis, and parents are never informed. In my 20 years in Hong Kong, I have come across many incidents involving pesticides, both where I lived and around green areas, where fogging was carried out without any advice, and a cloud of pesticides will enter my premises, exposing my family to the dangers of pesticides. Numerous studies link early exposure of pesticides in childhood to an array of diseases, from neurological, developmental, and reproductive disorders to cancers, like leukemia, brain and breast, just to name some. A new report released by the American Academy of Pediatrics highlights the dangers of pesticides for children. For more detailed information, you can go to the website. Thank you for your attention, and I hope we can further discuss this issue in future meetings. Thank you.
Okay. 我哋應該仲有一位叫做喜達。
Yes, I think we still have a deputation, Mr. Chen Chung-yao from Go Hong Kong, but he hasn't arrived yet. Never mind. All right, if for deputations who have yet to send in their written submission, we hope to receive your written submissions. We do have 2 written submissions from 2 other deputations who are not attending. So I'd like to first ask members whether you have any questions put to deputations. Mr. Albert Chan. Thank you, Chairman. I have a question for Mr. Paul Melsom.
It's regarding to the control of pesticides in Hong Kong. Thank you for providing such a well-informed information to us. I think the committee is well educated of the problem of the improper use of pesticides in Hong Kong, with those information that you provided here. But you understand that the Bill Committee, the main responsibility is to scrutinize the introduction of the 2 conventions that we should implement in Hong Kong. And some of those chemicals that you mentioned in your presentations are not included in the list of these 2 conventions. I would like to know what will be your suggestion to this committee as regarding to the improvement of the control on the usage of pesticides on 2 grounds. First is on the control of the type of of chemicals. Should we include some of those chemicals that you have mentioned on the list? And secondly is the administrative control improvement. Legislative change is one thing, but administrative or management control is another. Even though if we include those chemicals on the list, but if there is no proper management in Hong Kong, no proper monitoring mechanism in Hong Kong, those chemicals will still be widely used. And public safety, especially children and elderly, will be affected. I would like to hear your views.
Yeah, thank you, Albert, Mr. Right Honourable Albert. Can I just say that, yeah, the chemicals that I mentioned, diazinon, if you look at the government mosquito booklet, I've got a picture in there actually, I've got pages on, but it illustrates it's one of the organophosphates. Other organophosphates are malathion, temophos, and chlorpyrifos. These are neurotoxins. They're all linked to serious diseases in children. I know several of them have been used in schools. They can be used actually in classrooms. There's no restriction of them being used in classrooms. Diazinon, for instance, was banned, as I said in my thing, it was banned in March in the whole of Europe. And they wouldn't ban it for fun. They ban it because it's a serious pesticide. If you go to Google and you Google diazinon against non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, many pages come up linking that pesticide to non-Hodgkin. The government is really, technically, I'm sorry to say, inept. I've contacted the government on numerous occasions, the FEHD, the AFCD, the EPD, the Leisure Services. For years, my son's school was sprayed at kindergarten. It had, in the pictures in the long version, it had paraquat that was, it was a herbicide that was sprayed outside the kindergarten. I spoke to the EPD then. They said it's on the desk. They did nothing about it, virtually. They just had a word with people. It's that paraquat, gramoxone should be banned, as far as I'm concerned, dioxin, all the organophosphates. There should be an immediate suspension of those chemicals in schools. The kids are getting this on them. I've got chemical sensitivity now. I go around some of the schools and I can feel the chemicals coming on me. If I can feel the chemicals coming on me because of the chemical sensitivity, because I was affected by a diazinon in one school, I worked in one school with the plants. I touched up against the plants in the morning. I asked the gardeners what happened, and they said, I said, have you been spraying chemicals? They said, yes. I went to the back of the shed. They showed me the bottle of diazinon. I had to go to hospital because I had numbing all up my arms and my leg and my thing, and that was in a school. You imagine the kids are picking this up, not fully realising what's happening. So it is serious. As far as the technical knowledge of the government goes, also, the Stockholm and the Rotterdam conventions don't go far enough. I've looked at the chemicals, and really, it's great what they're doing, but there's a whole lot of chemicals there. Even the pyrethroids, which is another set of chemicals which people think are safe, and you'll be told by some of the pesticide companies that the pyrethroid set of chemicals are safe, but in fact they're a derivative of a plant, which is the Chrysanthemum pyrethrum, and they have links to endocrine disruptions. And endocrine disruptors. So they are not safe. They have linked to diseases, and still the research is going on. Also, the government, I've been to the 6th floor of Chung-kai, the pesticides office, and the technical knowledge, actually, when I've even rung up the FEHD, I'm afraid the technical knowledge is so poor in Hong Kong, it's unbelievable. They've got no idea of the chemicals. They need to be technically to come up to date on international standards and knowledge. Anyway, thank you. I hope that answers the question. And also, I'd like to say, there's actually no horticultural college in Hong Kong. If you go to the UK or other countries, they do get training. I had training in the use of pesticides. And all these gentlemen say they get training. The training, it's not licensed. So in America and the UK, they have licenses. Okay, they have, as far as I'm aware, they have licenses. And they have to know their maths. If somebody goes and sprays in a classroom, they can, I've been told even by directors of some of the companies, they can make mistakes by 10 times. So the concentration could be 10 times in a classroom. And there's microencapsulated chemicals, which are little balls of pesticide, which have been sprayed in the classrooms. These have got a half-life of 30 days. And then the other ones will break over a period of another 60 days or longer. So they can be in the classrooms for 90 days. So the children, and I'm talking about primary school children, are exposed to these for nearly a whole year if it's sprayed 3 times throughout the year. It is terrible. I fear for my son at school for these chemicals. Okay.
我想梁廣源先生都可以俾少少意見嘅，即係作為呢個嘅
Mr. Leung Kwong-yun, I'd like you to speak up as well because you are the representative of the Pest Control Personnel Association of Hong Kong. I'd like you to answer 2 questions about the applicators. Are they aware of the health hazards they are exposed to? Have they been inflicted with any particular harm? Do you have the information? And secondly, Mr. Melsom talked about training for the applicators about the use of chemicals. Can you give us some information? I am in this trade. I provide the service. I have been in this for many years. The association has also been formed for many years, and I have been gathering the information for over a decade. From what I know, whether it be our frontline applicators, well, I don't have the information for too long ago, but in recent years, we tend to use pesticides of low toxicity and also water-soluble pesticides. So there have not been any major incidents. But I know that some people have had skin reactions because some people may be allergic to pollen. But the core personnel in this industry have been trained. We would inform the customers when they should come back after gassing their houses. And we also operate training courses to teach the applicators the relevant knowledge. We'll continue to conduct such training courses. We'll also educate customers. In fact, customers are the best people to monitor our staff. Sometimes we send our own code and guidelines to the large enterprises. And if they would like to seek our services, it would be up to the management and purchasing office of these enterprises to monitor the work of our staff on their premises. If you like to ask about industrial accidents caused by pesticides and whether customers have been harmed, I would think they are few and far between. Rather, if you use the bleach, for example, in your daily life, I would think that actually is more dangerous than pesticides. Mr. Leung, I'd like to follow up on that question. Do you have any statistics about the cancer rate of your workers? Are they exposed to some kind of occupational disease? Have you done any systematic research? Well, this is difficult. We only have 2 market segments. The core personnel would be around 4,000, but most of them are working for the government as outsourced workers. I think the AFCD has the figures. With regard to the private enterprises, many of us are SMEs. Some of them do not pay very well, so there is high wastage. But those who have remained in the trade have all received training. Well, I think only individuals were found to be sensitive to chemicals, and those have left the industry. I know many people in this trade. They have lived long. I don't think there are any figures to show that since they have been using pesticides, they have suffered from any particular health harm. We, our association, always encourages our members to go for body checks. And as of now, we do not have any evidence to show that pesticides are affecting the health of the frontline applicators or the public. We used to have organic phosphate or DDT in the 50s and 60s, but now we don't use it anymore. If you put down DDT in a quotation, people will not have you. Sorry, I'd just like to add to what Mr. Leung said. Because chemicals in the pesticides can affect your respiratory system, and the effect will not be immediate. Now, if we say we spray aerosol in the atmosphere, we must go for chemicals with low toxicity and low residual rate. And they must wear activated carbon masks, and everybody must be removed from the premises for 2 to 3 hours. They must open all the windows for degassing. No, I like to specifically ask about the workers, because the health effects will surface only after 1 or 2 decades. Remember pneumoconiosis? People got to recognize it only after a long time, so that now it is included in the list of occupational diseases. So I'd like to know more about the workers in your industry. Do you have more systematic and comprehensive surveys about people who have been exposed to such chemicals on a long-term basis because they are in the industry, and how their respiratory system is being affected. Well, we do not have the resources. And we used to be a high-risk industry, but now we are no longer a high-risk industry. Dr. Helena Wong. Thank you, Chairman. It seems the deputations are all in support of the bill. Some of them, nevertheless, question whether enough has been done, especially with regard to the banning of toxic substances and pesticides, and whether some have not been listed in the proposed schedule. Mr. Paul Melsom has mentioned diazinon. So is it that the prohibited substances list, is it drawn up in a comprehensive manner? And then some deputations have said that there is already enough self-discipline in the industry, so the administration doesn't have to tackle a code of conduct for the practitioners this time around. But then we have seen from some written submissions, even though the deputations themselves are not here, saying that the administration should face up to the fact that there should be a professional license for the practitioners before they can use pesticides. Just now, Mr. Paul Melsom also mentioned that he is of the view that the present code is too lenient, too lax, and therefore it is not of a lot of use. So I'd like to ask deputations and individuals, do you think we should expand the list of substances? Or is it that at the same time we should also go for a more stringent code, or should we go for a licensing system? Deputations, please speak up. Is it Mr. Choi? Yes, please. As Mr. Leung was saying, there is very much self-discipline in the industry. The bosses know that, well, even if they are not intending to be benevolent to their staff, they don't want to suffer from higher costs by using dangerous substances. Well, I have been in the front line for 30 years in this industry, and I know what the risks are. Some frontline workers exercise very good self-discipline by going for body examinations from time to time. They know that if there is a high reading in terms of the liver enzyme, they will exercise more care because they want to stay healthy. So there is natural adjustment. As for the licensing system, well, we can talk about that. Actually, we actually do not want to make use of chemicals so much. We go for physical prevention first, and pesticides is really the last resort. We always go for easily degeneratable and also low toxicity substances. We don't use organic phosphate anymore.
Yes, Mr. Yip. First, about licensing. Now, the sector and our practitioners do keep an open mind. We would like to work with the administration, but when it comes to amendments, we hope that the amendment would be sensible, and when we introduce any form of regulation, there should be more local studies. When you cite statistics and studies from overseas studies, those may not be conclusive, and those may not really apply to Hong Kong. For example, some chemicals might be used in other countries, but not in Hong Kong. But and also because of Hong Kong's unique atmosphere, the chemicals used might be different. So you need to consider the weight to be given to overseas studies. And our practitioners are used to being monitored or regulated, so we do keep an open mind. But one point to note is that for frontline practitioners, they might have been in the trade for over a decade. So when they first joined the trade, they might not have attained a high educational level. And if there is a qualification requirement, they might lose their job. And this might not be doing good for the community. Paul, you want to say something?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the people who go and spray the pesticides will have protective clothing on. When they spray the pesticides in the schools, they leave the pesticides there. These pesticides sometimes have active. They can be there for 2 or 3 days afterwards. They can have long half-lives of 30 days. So they can be in the classroom, the kids can play amongst the plants, pick it up for a long term. And if it's on a regular spraying basis, the kids are bioaccumulating these chemicals. Additionally, these chemicals also, some chemicals will break down. And the toxic, the actual, which I've indicated, I think, the toxic chemicals from these are far more toxic, 10 to 100 times more toxic than the actual chemical itself. So the kids are left with this in the schools, and I say the new microencapsulated ones, they may spray these they can spray demand CS in the classrooms. This is left in the classroom. They can drip the spray. We don't know because nobody ever sees what they do. They're never regulated. The government doesn't. I've rung up the government and they said until somebody dies, we'll do something, and that's disgusting. So they're only guidelines. They say they're not obligated to ask the companies what they do. They've told me that. They can, as I say, if some child dies, then we have to wait for something like it happened in Stanley before, with the girl unfortunately died because the tree fell on her. We have to wait for something like that to happen before the regulations are changed. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see some child get poisoned, but there's a long-term effect of poisons. This is what we need to worry about. And those microencapsulated balls, as I say, are there up to 90 days. The kids can breathe them in. They can crush them on their arms. But basically they're there to kill the cockroaches which run along and they break on the cockroaches. These should never be used in classrooms. Canada looked at this before and they said, no, we're not going to use it, okay, for instance, okay, that particular chemical. As far as the guidelines and risk assessment goes with the FEHD, they're supposed to be a register of chemicals over 2 years within the schools, a comprehensive record, it says, but in I've asked in the schools, I've asked the vice principals, I've asked administrators, there is never a records kept. So this self-regulation is complete rubbish. I'm sorry to say that. It's appalling. Also, in the schools, there's no cordoning off put on. There can be pregnant women who sit on the seats after the diazonon's been put there. They've got fetuses, because many pregnant women go in there, that can pick up these chemicals, and that can affect them for later development, all sorts of development issues. So there are so many gaps in this. I just find it frightening. I fear for my child at school. We don't know. It's a secret of what's being sprayed. We never see them go in the spray. Nobody sometimes will admit to being sprayed at all. And there's not just the organophosphates have been used in the schools because I've seen a list that I've shown. And I know diazonon was used, chlorpyrifos was used, temifos was used. And if you look at the government mosquito booklet, it lists the chemicals that be used, which also includes malathion. Although diazonon is not used for mosquitoes, the industry has used it. Okay, and there are different different companies. So you've got some companies like Rentokil that might be in the FTSE 100, okay, and they're looking for business. And you might get some companies that are very small, and they're going for the lowest tender. So you're either looking for maybe, I'm not going to say which one, but one may go for a high kill and use a high concentration to kill the cockroaches or the mosquitoes to get more business. Okay, so that's not regulated. They can use any concentration they want of chemical. And also the chemical can be sprayed anywhere, okay, and they can use cocktails of chemicals. So in my son's school they used Demand, CS, they used Fendona in the classrooms. And on the outside you've got mosquito spraying going on, and then you've got the government coming in around the school, the FEHD, spraying also. Other chemicals. And I've since spoken to them over the last couple of years and they've stopped. They're using safer larvicides, which they could use. So sometimes they're not always looking at the safest means. And then there's also the thing of a rolling program of spraying in the schools. So they're not looking at Pacific saying, looking at this classroom's got cockroaches in. We'll look at that. We'll try and get rid of the egg cases. We'll sweep up everything and clean it. okay, which they could do, they've got a rolling thing for business and they're doing the whole school. Okay, so it's really about business sometimes rather than health and safety. Health and safety comes a long way down. And same with mosquitoes. If you go into the schools, they've got gradients in drains, and also I've seen even recently built ones which are level. So there's no fall for the water, so there's water accumulation there. So this building regulation needs to be looked at as well, so it gets rid of these kind of mosquito habitats. Also broken drains can be fixed. There's also a sump in the drains which holds water, which that needs to be looked at. And also leaf accumulation. To get rid of this kind of thing, they can use, it's nice to hear the industry talking about safer means as well, can I just say as well, it's very positive. There are also CO2, heat, which can be used a lot more. There's biorepellents that are coming through effective microorganisms. They're very good using things like lemongrass and chili biorepellents. There's also, and once you start getting all the natural stuff in, you get the biodiversity coming back. So there's a bat in Hong Kong called the Japanese pipistrelle, and it's very common. It eats up to 3,000 insects a night. So if we get rid of all these dangerous pesticides and we monitor it and we keep it at a safe level, we can get things like dragonfly. Well, some schools have stopped because I've spoken to them, have got wildlife coming back. They've got dragonflies coming back and they're eating the mosquitoes. Okay?
I think, Paul,
okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Helena Wong, you have a follow-up question? Yes, I want to follow up on this. Now that I've heard the comments, it seems the sector's representatives are not against the idea of enhancing the code for pest control practitioners or even the introduction of a licensing mechanism. The important point is the reasonable, whether the regulation is reasonable. However, in this amendment bill, it seems not to be the focus. It seems the focus is on introducing the international conventions for implementation in Hong Kong and to have more pesticides included in our legislation. Now, of course, the sector's representatives must be concerned mostly about the practitioners' health, because you also have regular checkups for frontline workers. Now, you also mentioned for the comparatively low-skilled, experienced practitioners who joined the trade a long time ago, they might lose their job because of more stringent qualification requirement. Now, of course, you are concerned about the jobs of your fellow practitioners, but we are concerned about public health for the community as a whole. So I'd like to seek your views on this. If at this stage we pass this bill on the prohibited use of pesticides before we start a discussion on the regulation of the sector, would this be better, or would you rather have a discussion of both the introduction of the conventions and the regulation of the sector in one go? Yes, Mr. Yip. Ms. Wong, for the latest two conventions, they cover more persistent pesticides that are with a higher toxicity. I recommend that the bill be passed as soon as possible so that people stop using it.
Mr.
Leung, I support the passing of the bill as soon as possible because our sector has already started a discussion on a possible monitoring system for the sector. We will start discussing with the government very soon because many people, including practitioners and consumers, are involved. They would be consulted and they might have different requirements. Say for those with higher qualifications, they might graduate from secondary schools or universities having gone through 300 or 400 hours of training. As for bosses of pest control companies, well, they might want different requirements. They might want licenses to be granted very easily. So things will be in a chaos. So on regulating frontline workers like gardeners, this is a complex issue. We started looking into this issue 4 or 5 years ago because many parties are involved and we have been dragging our feet. So I support the passing of the bill first, because if the bill is not passed, these pesticides or chemicals will continue to be used in Hong Kong. And then actually we have been discussing this matter all along, and that is to say how our sector would be regulated. So our association absolutely support the administration in passing the bill. Well, we have 2 more members, Mr. Alan Leung and Mr. Albert Chen. Thank you, Chairman. Now, we are all aware of the fact that since 2007, we have introduced regulation on the hazardous chemicals and pesticides in Hong Kong. Now, about this bill, the focus is on prohibiting the export and use of pesticides. Of course, the bill should be passed as soon as possible because many people are still using those pesticides. Now we have already regulated the manufacture, sale, possession, and import and supply of these chemicals. But we're concerned about the health of our children and the health of the public, so even the use should be restricted as soon as possible. And the permit is necessary for the use. There should not be any more delay. According to the administration's paper, they have all along, in terms of the training for pest control practitioners and the code applicable to pest control practitioners, they have been working on it and they have formulated the guide or guidelines or the code of practice with the collaboration with the trade. So can I make this conclusion at this stage? Of course, I welcome any explanation from the administration. Now, about this code of practice, which is a collaboration with the trade, and also, according to the paper, a lot of work has been done to enhance the training for pest control practitioners. In fact, this is not true. Or has there been any fault in terms of enforcement by the administration? And in such cases, do you have any suggestions on how things could be improved so that we can include all these in the bill? Of course, what you say today will be put on record. We have minutes of the meeting, and we have government representatives here sitting opposite. So I'd like to ask the questions.
Would any deputations like to speak up?
As I've said before, the guidelines are totally ineffective. I've contacted the government on numerous occasions, and there's so many breaches. Obviously, it's not been done right. I'm a horticulturalist, and the standards of spraying, and I was trained properly in the UK, and I like living in Hong Kong, and I've been here a long time, but it frightens me immensely of what's going on for children. We don't know how good the training is. It's not regulated. It's not actually, the government don't know. The government always run away from anything whenever I contact them at all. There should be strict regulation, and when they go and spray in the rooms, you don't know what's going on and what's been done because nobody ever watches them. Nobody's ever monitored, and they have and in my pictures in the long version, which I've sent you, you can see several breaches, which I've got pictures on. Even the other day, last Wednesday, I was going outside, open restaurants, and there was insecticide being dripped into the drains where people would be sitting in a few hours' time. I didn't have my camera with me, but these are the kinds of things that are going on. I've called the police before to stop them spraying diazinon when there's children walking by, and the legislative services admitted this was a few years ago, admitted they got it wrong, and there's diazinon spray coming all the distance around, the vapours coming to everybody, and they had to change their contract, their guidelines. So I've rung up I've rung the government so many times, and I keep ringing them up, and there's so many breaches. Nobody is taking it seriously. The chemicals are lying there on the floor. The children can pick them up on their hands, put them in their mouths, and it's a long-term effects of these chemicals. The endocrine disruptors, the cancers that they may get in future life, because people get like cancers 10, 20 years' time, where did I get that from? Well, it's probably bioaccumulation or the breakdown of these products, as I said before. This all needs to be looked at, and in their training they probably are not aware that there are some very good websites out there. There's Pesticide Action Network USA or Pesticide Action Network UK, which indicate all the actual accumulation of some of these chemicals. And I don't think it's more of a business thing rather than looking at health and safety and the accumulation of these chemicals in children. It frightens me. Thank you.
Any other deputations? Ms. Mack. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to respond to what Mr. Chen and Mr. Paul Melsom said about the cumulative effect of pesticides on the human body. The industry said that they are small companies, so they do not have the statistics, and therefore they cannot afford the time to monitor frontline staff and their exposure to the pesticides. Whether or not the toxicity of the pesticides is high or low. If you are talking about immediate effect, now Mr. Albert Chan was talking about long-term effect between 5 to 20 years. If small companies do not have the capacity to come up with a database, then perhaps it should be up to the government to gather the statistics. So we can have some research data for analysis. Say, on an annual basis, can companies voluntarily submit the names of their staff to the government, and also the 3 main types of pesticides they are exposed to, so we can build up the data. And if in case the hospital authority or the bureau should find that there is a higher incidence rate of certain cancers in Hong Kong, or other disorder or physical disorder, then we can compare that against the risk that such staff are exposed to. I think the government should be responsible for gathering the data, because as we said, even scientists know that it is difficult to look at the pathology of such chemicals, because usually you only look at one chemical and whether there is acute toxicity. But even if the chemical is of low toxicity, it can accumulate, but then the process of gathering data can be difficult. So I'm of the view that the administration, the government, has the responsibility to build up that data bank. I don't think this has anything to do with privacy, and we are not trying to monitor the type of pesticides used by the industry. This is really for protecting public health. Ms. Nuria Gonzalez. Lorenzo.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, for the past 2 years, my colleague Paul Melsom and myself, we have been having meetings with people in charge of health and safety in the school where our children go, which includes many other schools. And it has been a very hard battle to fight, because it has been a very, very unprofessional response that we got from people who are, in charge of the safety of our children. It took us a long time to, first of all, get the meeting, and secondly, when we found out that so many chemicals have been using for so many years in these schools, we were just giving like a very cold treatment, and finally, because we keep trying and trying, we managed to, basically got at least one of the schools out of the spraying system of the whole organization. And this is terrible because it's only because Paul Melsom and myself have been fighting for so long that this particular school is out of the spraying system. The rest of the schools, they're still being sprayed. We talked to numerous teachers in these schools, and they're all very concerned as well. Some of those teachers were pregnant, during all those years while working there, and they didn't know themselves, that this was happening in the schools. They didn't know that these schools get sprayed 4 times a year, inside and outside. Like Paul Melsom said, mixing different types of chemicals and building a cocktail of chemicals, which nobody knows how it interacts with those children. And we just think there should be stricter regulations, especially in the schools, and really parents should be informed of what goes inside those classrooms and those playgrounds, because these children are very, very small. They're in the school for 6 hours a day, and they're constantly exposed to the dangers of these pesticides. And last year there was an article in South China Morning Post. Actually, there was 2 articles, one coming from Hong Kong University and one coming from Chinese University. It came from the oncologist department, and they're saying that cancers among children and youngsters in Hong Kong have risen up so much in the past few years. I'm not saying that that's purely related to this, but we have to look at the whole picture. And my daughter, Paul's son, and other, we're representing many children and many parents, of many children in these schools. They sit constantly on the floor. These floors, they are carpeted, and they get sprayed all around. The life of those pesticides in man-made surfaces are very, very long. They can last for months. It's very difficult for parents, to know what's going on in the schools, and it's just by chance that Paul Melsom found out, and we pursued this for 2 years. We're very happy with the results. We're not giving up, and we carry on, and we really hope that this can be extended to other schools in Hong Kong, which get sprayed constantly in regular basis, just for the safety of all those children. They have to deal already with a lot of issues in Hong Kong, like pollution, but at least the indoor area where they stay so many hours, we want to make it a cleaner place and safer place for them to study, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alan Leong, yes, I'd like to follow up. P.S. Can you respond, please, or DS, on behalf of the administration? Because our friends sitting opposite you have stated their views. Does it show that what you have been doing vis-a-vis stepping up training for the pesticide applicators and also implementing the code of practice, don't you think more can be done? If you think so, how better can you do your job? And also with regard to Dr. Karen Mack, who is asking you to gather the data, what is your response? Because as she said, other people cannot gather the data. Mr. Alan Leong, wouldn't you like to ask the deputations questions first before we ask the administration to respond? Yes, I respect you, Chairman. But if we do that, the deputations would not be able to hear the response of the administration. I want some immediate response from the administration. But it's up to you, Chairman. It's your decision. Mr. Albert Chan, would you like to speak on the same point? Yes. Actually, I have already asked all questions that I like to ask the deputations. Unless other members would like the deputations to answer. However, I do think that the administration should also respond. I was asking the administration 2 questions. 1, the same as Mr. Alan Leong's question, and 2, we were told that some of the pesticides are not included in the list of the conventions. What is the response? And also, the actual management and supervision, like in the educational institutes, around these institutes and also on campus, and the impact on school children. Can the administration please comment so the deputations can also listen to the views of the administration? And after that, maybe the deputations would like to respond. Well, okay. Mr. Alan Leung has asked 2 questions and Mr. Albert Chen 1 question. Dr. Helena Wong, you have raised your hand. Would you like to ask deputations questions or the administration? 1 each. Okay, maybe you can ask your questions and then I'll ask the administration to respond. I'd like to thank Mr. Melsom and Ms. Lorenzo for reminding us about the possible harm done to our school children because they're exposed to pesticides. My question is, Mr. Melsom mentioned that overseas, some schools actually ban the use of pesticides altogether. However, Ms. Lorenzo has said that it seems you're not exactly asking for a total ban of pesticides in schools. Rather, you are saying that at least parents should be notified and teachers should know what has been sprayed, whether it is toxic, when it is sprayed, and for how long people should not be in contact with certain furniture, etc. Is that already done? If it is done, is it your view then that there shouldn't be or needn't be a total ban of pesticides in schools? Can you please comment on that point? And then I'd like the administration to answer the question. What kind of codes are there? We mentioned school environments, parks, especially where pregnant women and children go and where the old and frail would go. What about public education and also codes for the industry? Do you think you should improve that? I think you have asked the administration 3 to 4 questions altogether. So I will ask, first of all, Ms. Lorenzo to respond, and then the administration can speak up. Ms. Lorenzo.
Okay, we actually, we are pro...
Can you speak closer to the mic?
Yes, sorry. We would like to ban all the chemicals inside the schools, but we are pro a way of controlling the pest called integrated pest control management, which is used now in many countries, including Canada and the States, okay? In Hong Kong, we understand it's difficult. Certain times of the year, you get lots of mosquitoes and cockroaches, but Mr. Paul Melsom is working now with the school in integrated pest control management. And what he does is actually he looks at the sources of problematic areas and try to target those sources without the use of pesticides, okay, inside the classes and outside the playground. I think the government, like Mr. Paul Melsom said, they have been using these larvicides in drainages, okay, so they have stopped all the fogging that they used to carry out before. That's a big improvement. So this is what we mean to control, to control the use of chemicals by doing the integrated pest control management that is actually very effective if it's done in regular basis. This is the most important thing. And maybe I'll pass the microphone to Mr. Paul Melsom because he's in charge of the school at the moment.
Mr. Melson?
Yeah, I think there needs to be done a lot more research and development for the government through natural controls, which I've indicated in my long paper there. They need to really look at the alternatives for the industry, for the safety, also for the workers as well. There are a lot of new things coming into from all around the world. Okay, so there are a lot of alternative methods to control pests. And some pests, like cockroaches, actually aren't dangerous to health so much as they're more annoying. And you shouldn't go around spraying the whole school because of 1 or 2 cockroaches. It's ridiculous. I do understand there are fears of diseases which we haven't spoke about, like dengue fever, Japanese encephalitis, malaria, and the Nile disease. So there are fears of those, but they're usually in pockets. Over 2 years ago, one of the school systems the whole school system was sprayed. I'm talking about many schools, maybe over a dozen schools were sprayed because of the fear of dengue fever. Now, as far as I know, these were imported cases from other countries, and only 1 or 2 schools had had 1 or 2 children that had it. So why spray all the schools, and why not really not have a knee-jerk reaction with dangerous chemicals and use organophosphates, which were used at the time? This is very worrying. It's a lack of knowledge and the overuse of pesticides to expose to children, and then looking at the natural controls is far better. But the government needs to monitor and regulate it. The government are asleep. When I've actually also, as far as, can I just say, the health, I went to Prince of Wales, the toxicological department. There are 2 toxicological training departments in Hong Kong. One's United Christian and one's in Prince of Wales. But I saw the toxicologists there, and they admitted to me they did not have any information on dermal intake of chemicals. So really also the hospital system needs to address this as well. I went to the accident and emergency as well at Queen Mary, and the chemical apparently, I forget it's called polyesterase or something like that, breaks down very quickly. And to actually get a record of what's in your skin, it goes through very quickly. But as I've mentioned, some of these chemicals have high toxic effects after they've broken down. So, and also the bioaccumulative. So we need to look, the whole hospital system really needs to look at this as well, because it is lacking in data and knowledge.
Okay.
Thank you.
多謝各位團體。你哋歡迎喺度。
Thank you, deputations. You're welcome to stay behind. But I think members have put all the questions they need to you. We're going to hear from the administration now. You're welcome to stay or you may leave.
And listen to the response to from the government. 政府
From the administration, Mr. Philip Chan. Well, first of all, thank you, deputations, for attending. I have carefully heard the views of deputations, and I am delighted to hear that basically you're in support of the passing of the bill, because you understand that there is a need to regulate this matter. And the administration, like everyone else, attach importance to the safe use of pesticides and on the hazards caused to the environment. I'd like to respond to two main areas, and that is the role that we are playing at present. And secondly, in terms of training for pesticide applicators and use of pesticides in schools, whether we could make any improvements. In terms of the system in Hong Kong on regulating pesticides, actually we have CAP 133 Pesticides Ordinance, and this is the amendment bill, what the amendment bill is targeting, and we are trying to regulate the importation, manufacture, sale, and possession and supply of pesticides in Hong Kong. And under the ordinance, whether it's for agricultural use or domestic use, first of all, under CAP 133, the director of AFC must maintain a register, and all pesticides to be sold in Hong Kong must firstly be registered with the director of AFC before it could be sold, because we have registered pesticides and unregistered pesticides in terms of their toxicity. When the director considers whether the pesticides should be registered, it's based on the toxicity, and this is according to the WHO's standard. For chemicals with high toxicity, the director will not put it on the register. Even if it's registered, importation cannot be done immediately. A license must first be applied with the director of AFC before these pesticides could be imported. For unregistered pesticides, you need to apply for a permit. Now, for pesticides requiring a permit, more stringent conditions will be imposed by the director. For example, only practitioners who have gone under a high levels of training could use such pesticides, and I mean unregistered pesticides. And this is how the system works at present. Ms. Mack just now mentioned pesticides present in food. I think she's referring to the pesticides being entering into the food chain and the implication on public health. Actually, last year we passed a piece of legislation on the residual pesticide in food, and the legislation sets down the permissible residual limit. And the legislation was passed in LegCo last year, and it will come into operation in April. As for the other point raised by Ms. Mack concerning the notification system, whether things could improve, actually the Center for Food Safety does make a monthly announcement on their random inspection on food stuff. And if pesticides are found in food, announcement will be made. And depending on the seriousness of the matter, we might hold a press briefing. And if necessary, it depends on need. But anyway, we are very transparent in terms of releasing news on the web, and we welcome any suggestions. So first of all, these are two different matters. If you are talking about residual pesticides present in food, this is another piece of legislation. We're talking about the origin, and that's the use of pesticides. Dr. Wong and Mr. Chen asked whether the proposed list in the schedule is not sufficient. For example, there are other pesticides mentioned, paraquat and diazinon mentioned today, and under the present system, the director would review the list on a regular basis, or review the register on a regular basis based on the toxicological study conducted in other jurisdictions and the implications on public health. As these study results evolve, the director would constantly review the register, and if after if scientific evidence shows that the pesticide does cause hazards to human health, the pesticide will be taken out from the register. Let me cite an example. Mr. Chen is concerned about the pesticide paraquat, and in 2012 the AFCD conducted a study on the register of this chemical, and in September last year, actually the conditions for registration was amended. If the warning is now changed and the coloring is now deeper. Apart from adding this condition for registration, the AFCD is also looking into other alternatives to paraquat, and the AFCD is minded to replace paraquat, but since it is used extensively, we need some time, but it will be taken out of the register in future. And diazinon, according to studies, the director will gradually have it taken out from the register. Of course, some time is needed. I want to cite these two examples to explain that under Cap 133, the director of AFC is empowered to alter the register, as these two pesticides are now on the register. Well, we understand that the director is empowered, but the point is whether he's taking action too late. I think this is an interactive process, Chairman. Apart from complaints received, we also need to look at the trend of use in other jurisdictions and also the trend in Hong Kong. Well, we're happy to conduct studies. Now, do you have an advisory committee with scientists advising the administration, or the director just makes his own decision? We do have experts. Would you like to supplement, Dr. Sit? Thank you, Chairman. For pesticides that are permitted to be sold or used in Hong Kong, we make sure, first of all, that these pesticides do not pose serious hazards to human health, or these pesticides are of low toxicity before they're allowed to be used. And our officers do inspect and conduct visits, for example, on the supplier's premises, to ensure that they abide by the code. About the two pesticides, diazinon and paraquat, we have been discussing with the sector, and we're minded to, by the end of 2014, have it taken out from the register. Now, Hong Kong has a subtropical climate. We definitely do not encourage anyone to indiscriminately use pesticides. But in terms of pests like mosquitoes that might carry disease, that might spread diseases, I think for the sake of public health, these pests should be exterminated. Well, I asked a question about experts. Now, my question is, I know that the government does have advisory committees, and they advise government on what pesticides should be removed from the register. I'm asking whether you have this sort of mechanism, or what is your review mechanism? Perhaps let me supplement. Pesticides are special chemicals. I'm sorry, can you switch on the microphone or use the other one? Now, pesticides, this is a specialty, and in Hong Kong, no universities are providing such training. So we offer scholarships and send our officers to undergo training in other jurisdictions. I myself also went to UK to study about pesticides. In considering whether the pesticide should be kept or removed from the register, we make reference to the international conventions like the Stockholm or Rotterdam conventions and the FDA and the WHO standards.
So it is not just up to a few persons advocating something locally, because the use of pesticides has always been controversial. It was mentioned that many chemicals are being used in schools and it is dangerous. But I like to say that there are many different types of pests, and a new chemical can target a particular pest. So in certain cases, we need to use a few chemicals together in order to tackle a complicated problem. So if you're talking about a particular insect, you might have to tackle it with a certain chemical, and if it is mosquitoes or cockroaches, you have to use other chemicals. And some friends have said that they wouldn't like to see the use of organic phosphate and pyrethroids, etc. But actually, these are exactly what the WHO has suggested. They have suggested a long list of chemicals. Why is that so? This is because you cannot just make use of one chemical or two chemicals in order to kill off mosquitoes, because the mosquitoes can then develop the resistance. Therefore, you have to rotate some chemicals to tackle mosquitoes, and that is why the use of pesticides is a very specific science, and what we do here follow the international standards. I like to say that altogether we have already cancelled 36 registered pesticides, and only 19 are found in the two conventions. The other 17 have been regarded by the department as harmful after we have seen new scientific literature, so we have revoked their cancellation. When we do revoke their registration, when we register chemicals, we don't only look at a few factors. Some deputations have talked about endocrine disruptors. Now, if there is scientific proof that the endocrine system will be affected, we will certainly cancel the registration. We will not cancel registration just because there is suspicion, because there is suspicion on most chemicals in the world, but we must be scientific. If it is proved that the endocrine system will be affected, then certainly we will cancel its registration. If there is any scientific proof that the fetus will be harmed, we will also cancel the registration of that chemical. This is my response. Mr. Albert Chan. Albert Chan. Chairman, I hope the administration can give us some written information, because in future meetings, we are going to study the bill clause by clause. You mentioned a few chemicals which are not in the lists of the conventions, and you have mentioned paraquat that you intend to phase out later. The chemicals and pesticides mentioned at this meeting do not cover all the chemicals that we are concerned about. In 2006, I mentioned gramoxone. So I like the administration to give me some written information as to which chemicals are being supplied in the market today, but which are not in the lists of the two conventions. All right, can you give me the names of those chemicals? Number two, as Mr. Melsom mentioned, some pesticides are still being used in Hong Kong, but they have been banned in the UK. I'd like to know which pesticides are in this category. I'd like to know which of these pesticides are being used in Hong Kong while they have been banned overseas. As I said in the first meeting of the Bills Committee, other countries may go for parliamentary legislation to control the use of some chemicals, but then their municipal governments can also make laws to ban the use of pesticides. As I said, in Canada, even on a city level, some pesticides can be banned. In fact, quite a number of chemicals have been banned on the municipal level in Canada. My third question for you is, now administratively, because your legislation would mostly control the sale of such substances, but my understanding is that individual citizens can go and buy herbicides or pesticides, and it's very easy for them to get hold of such substances. Since there is no licensing control, anyone can purchase the chemical and use it indiscriminately. People can spray it on the roads or anywhere else. These people just may not know what they are using. And other people are affected if these people spray such chemicals indiscriminately, other people will be affected, and this is quite serious in the new territories. So through the legislative amendment here, are you going to bring any improvement? Maybe not, because this is administrative. So what are you going to do? You cannot say we will entrench the two conventions and that's the end of the problem. I'm telling you, no, that's not the case. So perhaps you should propose other amendments so you do not expose the public to such harm. Thank you. Mr. Albert Chan, I think you might like to refer to paper CB-2 763 today. And in the annex, in the appendix, there is already a very detailed list of pesticides being used in Hong Kong. Of course, you can refer to the list and ask the administration to identify from this list which of the chemicals here are already banned in overseas countries. Okay, because of time constraint, I will allow members to ask questions and then the administration can answer at one go. Dr. Helena Wong. Thank you. I am aware that the DAFC will be empowered to license or control imported pesticides. My question is, would it be that we do a very good gatekeeping job in Hong Kong, but will there be measures to prevent the smuggling of pesticides or the abusive uses of imported pesticides? Is this common in Hong Kong? Well, maybe you have a very strict legislative and judicial system. However, people might still smuggle highly toxic pesticides into Hong Kong for use. Do you have such statistics? Do you know whether the situation is serious vis-à-vis the illegal use of pesticides in Hong Kong? Secondly, on the 26th of February, when we had a meeting, we asked certain questions and we mentioned Hong Kong and Vancouver, a comparison of the pesticide control system. I'd like to ask the administration whether you have done the comparison, and can you let us know the results of your investigation? And what direction is this amendment regulation taking us? Well, I think you can refer to the paper for the meeting. That's in CB 763. Please refer to that paper. Mr. Alan Leong, thank you. Just now, maybe the DS has not heard me clearly. I was talking about the code of practices that was drawn up in collaboration with the trade and also training for pesticide applicators. I was asking them whether further improvements can be made. I also asked Dr. Karen Mack about her proposal to gather information. I was asking the administration whether it would respond to Dr. Mack's proposal to gather data. The DS, now you can take up the questions. Yes, Dr. Wong, one more question. If the bill is carried, could the administration tell us their timetable? In other words, how they can further explore into a licensing system and also improvements made to the code of practice. Do you have the intention to do those? And if yes, the timetable. Okay, can you answer all those questions? Please answer Mr. Alan Leung's questions first. Well, actually, I mentioned two aspects. First, the existing system. And two, the code of practice for applicators in order to tackle the loopholes of use. Allow me to add to my previous answer. Just now, Dr. Wong also asked us whether, after the bill is passed, whether we can ban the use of pesticides which are smuggled into Hong Kong from Shenzhen, for example. Actually, under Cap 133, that is already illegal. We don't need any code or regulation to do it because you're not allowed to take into Hong Kong any unregistered pesticide. We do have prosecution figures. In 2008, 5 cases. Fines were from $1,000 to $6,000. In 2009, 8 cases, fines $1,000 to $2,000. And then 2010, no cases. 2011, 4 cases, a fine of $800 or so. And then also some cases in 2012. So we already have the prosecution powers. And AFCD staff do regularly go to farms in the new territories to see whether they are using unregistered pesticides or whether they are in possession of such pesticides. And secondly, to remind them that they should use only registered pesticides. This is what we do regularly. Secondly, whether we should license the applicators, and also the code of practice, whether it is effective and whether it can be improved upon. In fact, yes, in 2007, the administration considered drawing up a licensing system for applicators so that applicators would have to go through training and to complete a certain number of hours of training. And also, if companies hire applicators, the companies should also be licensed. However, in the consultation process, as the industry was telling you, that actually the industry does not practice with the same standard that is among the companies in the industry. And at that time, there was not too much training available. And therefore, if we embarked lightly on such a system, there could be a lot of impact on the applicators, and the applicators actually also objected to it. After considering the views, as we said in the paper in para 14, if we were to enhance the awareness of the industry vis-à-vis the safe use of pesticides, we think we can do 3 things. Number 1, we'd like to design suitable training syllabuses. And we are very glad that we have seen more of these at the Hong Kong University, for example, at their SPACE, that is the College for Continuous Learning. There are now courses for the safe storage and use of pesticides. The same courses are offered by Polytechnic University and their extramural courses. So we see more participation. In 2007, about 10% of the people have been trained, and by 2012, we see 80% of the applicators having gone through certain training. And secondly, to draw up codes of practice for the sectors of pest control companies and workers, sports turf management personnel, and local farmers in collaboration with the trade. We have drawn up those codes, and we can see positive development. We can see that the different segments of the industry are quite happy to work with us because their staff are using the pesticides and they want their staff to remain safe. So we see quite positive response from the industry. Mr. Leong asked about the use of pesticides, and is it that there is room for improvement vis-à-vis the use of pesticides in certain spaces? Now, of course, there is always room for improvement, and what we are doing is not one-off. This is a continuous process. Dr. Mack was saying that if the industry can file us with the information about their staff, the background, the academic qualification of their staff, we are quite happy to build that data bank, but it is up to the industry to work with us.
Third point, education. This is also a continuous effort, including the information on the website and leaflets to educate the public on the safe and proper use of pesticides. Now, we checked our statistics, and there has never been any major incidents involving improper use of pesticides, and that's from our record. Today, we heard from the two expatriates here on the application of pesticides in schools. Now, we can undertake here that in relation to these cases, we will follow up on them and see how things could improve. We're going to look into that. And may I say here that we welcome suggestions. For example, Mr. Albert Chan in the past informed us of a lot of cases. This is an interactive process. Mr. Chan raised 3 questions. First, about the case in 2006. In fact, the pesticides was also a form of paraquat, but it has a brand name of gramazone. And this is the brand name of one of the most well-known brand name of paraquat. And in Canada, we did go back and look into that. At the national level, actually, their system is very similar to ours. They have similarly a register and a permit or license system. This is the form of regulation in Canada, and they do review the register and see if the pesticides are safe. For Vancouver, they have more stringent control, but it's not a total ban. So on the whole, we think that our system is quite similar to the Canadian system at this national level. Mr. Albert Chan also mentioned the individual cases complained by members of the public, and we will look into these cases, and we welcome more cases that are made known to us so that we can monitor the use of pesticides. As mentioned just now, in modern-day societies, especially in Hong Kong, where we have subtropical weather, the use of pesticides is quite necessary. But at the same time, we need to pay attention to public health and its impact on the environment. Mr. Chan. Yes, the administration has answered most of the questions, but in terms of the management and the monitoring system, can they supply a written answer? As mentioned by Mr. Melsom just now, they discussed with the government departments over many years, but they have done nothing at all. We hope that after passing the amendment bill, in terms of the actual monitoring and the enforcement, can you provide more information? Yes, we will make good use of this opportunity whilst we are amending the bill to review the system and see how the regulatory system can be improved. For example, with more experts participating in the process, we will consider that. So first of all, I welcome once again deputations for coming here and expressing your views. After this meeting, if you have any further comments, you're welcome to submit your written submission. And you can check all the relevant documents on the Electrical's website. So thank you for coming. The administration today has also submitted a paper. I believe members have read the paper, and the content has been covered during the Q&A just now. And Mr. Albert Chan asked some follow-up questions, and DS already answered these questions. So we're waiting for their written reply. The date of the next meeting should be on the 15th of April, 10:45 a.m. So, any further questions for the administration? No? If not, then these are the questions asked. If there are any further questions, please submit them after the meeting. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.